It's suggested the EU will give UK financial services firms access to its markets if it agrees that the UK's regulations are equivalent to its own. So can the city let out a sigh of relief? Well, with me now is Barney Reynolds. He's partner at the law firm Shearman and Sterling. Barney, very good evening to you.
Good evening.
You've actually been calling for this enhanced equivalence, as it's been known for a while. So
I have.
What does it all mean?
Essentially, it means that if the UK's financial regulations achieve the same outcomes as the EU's, there will be access from the UK to the EU and vice versa.
Right. So this won't, though, replicate the existing setup of passporting, will it?
No, it won't be exactly the same. It will be better in some respects in that the UK can achieve those high-level outcomes its own way. And do things in a way that fits better with our common law system. It will be different in as much as within the passport there's automatic access, although the price tag for that is you're subject to whatever rules the EU makes.
Well, quite, and some Brexiteers may not like this an awful lot because it leaves the UK as a rule taker, doesn't it?
It shouldn't do, because it's a question of how the outcomes are defined, but essentially the system is already in operation, for instance, with the United States. There's no suggestion the US is a rule taker from the EU. It's a sovereign-to-sovereign relationship.
Of course, yeah, the US is a slightly bigger entity than the UK, though, isn't it?
Well, in this context, we're looking at New York, and London is as big a financial centre globally as New York, so I think actually that's the right comparator.
I mean, you mentioned the US there. How has the EU's equivalence regime worked elsewhere around the world?
Pretty smoothly, in my view. It's in use all over the place. Mexico, Singapore, Hong Kong, all sorts of other countries, Japan, and there's no suggestion that other countries have to become rule takers in order to operate under this system.
And there's no reason why necessarily the EU would want to deprive the UK of such an arrangement then, or is there?
I don't think so, no. I mean, clearly, you know, there are political aspirations in play here, but I think once this sort of arrangement is established and beds down, those will dissipate and we'll be into a normal technocratic relationship, which will be win-win for the UK and the EU.
It's been suggested, though, that, I mean, equivalence does not function with certain financial products, does it? Bank lending, for example, some parts of the insurance market. So what would happen in those sectors?
Right now, it doesn't cover those. The proposal is to enhance equivalence in the way that I set out, in fact, in July 2017, and the white paper reflects that thinking. And under the enhancements, one of the key ones would be to plug those gaps.
Right, so insurance companies would be able to operate exactly the same way as they do at present?
Yeah, now in the white paper the government said it's not looking for equivalence for everything, and then certainly there are bits of the market in London that don't wish to have equivalence, small brokers perhaps, certain types of insurers, and maybe we don't seek equivalence for those. But generally speaking, it should be available on the enhancement basis for everyone.
And what's the difference, sorry, but this is going to sound quite train-spottery, but what's the difference between enhanced equivalence and equivalence?
So equivalence is an existing EU law concept that we were part of developing, in fact pioneering and developing. It's the best relationship for mutual recognition of standards in financial services available in the world. It's the best anyone's come up with. But it's not perfect. It's got the gaps you mentioned, and it's also subject to withdrawal without due notice being given, and those 2 points need fixing in any enhancement.
Right, so yes, under an ordinary equivalence, either side gives 1 month's notice to the other. Enhanced equivalence, it's what, just drawn out and protracted, or?
I would have thought a year or two, yes, which gives people the certainty to invest and to operate on the back of it.
And briefly, Barney, if this is actually what is going to happen, is the pound justified in moving to the extent it has done today?
I think so, because I think it's good for the UK, it's good for the global financial markets, but actually it's very good for the EU and for the EU consumer and corporate base.
All right, Barney Reynolds from Shearman and Sterling, good to see you.
Thanks
Thanks for joining me.